Cflrp stands for the Collaborative Forest Landscape Restoration Program or project, and we are one of 20 or perhaps 30 now in the country. We're very proud to have this designation, and really it's one of many designations that the landscape within Management Area 22 enjoys. It was actually one of the first outstanding bird areas recognized by Audubon, Arkansas, bringing back some of that kind of habitat that was probably common in the 19th century, the 18th century, and unfortunately we don't have records that go back much farther than that.
From the very early times, we were trying to regrow a forest. Much of it had been cut. Fire was excluded. It was viewed as being bad. And at the time, it's understandable. But what developed over 70 or 80 years of fire suppression is a forest very, very different from those described by Thomas Noddahl in 1870. A few other travelers and early scientists described forests in the Ouachita Mountains that are far different than they are today. They described forests of large trees, open understories, open mid-stories, and grass in the understories.
Collaborative partnerships are about partners from different agencies and different organizations coming together, providing a certain unique expertise that they have to contribute to a broader collaborative. And this is what the CFLR partnership's about on the Ouachita National Forest. It's about TNC bringing their expertise, the Native Expeditions doing the education and outreach, and it's about a long-term vision that a partnership has for a given landscape like the CFLRP project. And over time, working together as a group to solve the problems that one individual or agency couldn't do by themselves.
If we're going to affect dwindling populations of certain species of wildlife, that we really have to do it at a scale that it affects the populations, whether that be our game species or neotropical migrating birds whose populations are dwindling and they migrate here to breed. We have to affect the landscape.
The shortleaf pine bluestem restoration management area. So that's one of the areas. Occupies 155,000 acres in western Arkansas, west of Waldron, and another 50 or 60,000 acres over in Oklahoma north of Broken Bow Lake. One of the concepts we use is desired conditions. So you can think about where would we like this forest to be in 20 years or 25 years or even 50 years in the future. We think that's the important place to focus, is on the long-term vision.
Some of the accolades that we've received with this program, it was not the CFLRP before 3 years ago. It was always known as the Pine Bluestem Program or effort. The Ouachita's received several awards for individuals as well as the forest itself in carrying out efforts to expand and improve the restoration of the pine bluestem on the Ouachita. We basically have 3 treatments. It's really a very simple restoration process, but extremely demanding as far as continuing to do certain things over time. The 3 treatments are basically commercial and non-commercial thinning, and then prescribed burning. Our goal is 100,000 acres a year.
One of the things the forest plan calls for in this area is a lot of prescribed burning. It's important for people to understand that when we conduct prescribed burning, it's done under carefully controlled conditions. We have highly trained crews. We do a lot of planning beforehand. We watch the weather conditions. We have areas, control areas, either a road, in some cases a bulldozed line to serve as a fire line so that it doesn't go where it shouldn't go. And we have very good success with keeping fire on the landscape and burning at appropriate times. Initially, a burned area may not look very good. It may look charred and like a disaster has just happened. But often we'll find that within weeks, the same area will be greened up, and there'll be, again, this rich mixture of grasses and forbs coming up to revegetate the system.
So a combination of prescribed fire, the use of specific herbicides to take those species out under those pines or hardwoods, and then commercial thinning. Then we put it on a rotational prescribed fire program so that we keep those grassy kind of floral conditions on the forest floor. That's benefit most of our species of game and non-game species.
When you start getting to a restored condition, there's upwards of 150 understory plants that you start seeing across the landscape. So that in and of itself spawns all sorts of benefits or byproducts of our restoration effort. Some of those are increasing the forage for white-tailed deer by 7 times, making a better place for wild turkey to live and multiply. We have threatened and endangered species on the Ouachita, the American burying beetle and red cockaded woodpecker, and both of those species thrive in this same habitat, and we're seeing extremely good increases in breeding groups of the red cockaded woodpecker right now.
A lot of the desired condition is focused on the needs of the red cockaded woodpecker, so we don't harvest very many trees. We actually preserve or retain the trees that are mature up to 120 years of age and even more as needed. And they need these old trees so they can build their cavities in them. Older pine trees develop a disease called red heart, and that's what enables this woodpecker, the only woodpecker in North America, to drill its hole, its cavity, in a live pine tree. And the cavity doesn't hurt the pine tree.
What we're doing right now is RCW prep. We're protecting these trees from, exposure to fire, so that way they stay alive. It's called the red cockaded woodpecker. Mm-hmm. We're protecting their environment by doing this and hopefully prolong their life and invite them into more habitable areas.
One of the ways that we're teaching kids about how habitat restoration is so important is with the monarch butterfly. We're using the monarch as a flagship for teaching kids that if we provide the habitat, which is open landscape to where the forest floor is exposed to sunlight so that herbaceous plants can grow, especially the milkweeds, then the butterflies will come.
This has been an overview of the Cflrp and the Ouachita National Forest, focusing on how a shortleaf pine and bluestem grass ecosystem is being restored on a large landscape in Arkansas and Oklahoma.